Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm so excited that you joined. I'm just going to give everybody maybe like a minute to join before I kick off the presentation, since it is kind of first thing in the morning for a lot of folks. And for those of you who aren't yet in the Slack channel, there is tips for successful cross-sector partnerships Slack channel in Good Tech Fest, and I'll have a colleague or two in there who can help me answer questions during the presentation. Okay, 9:01. I think we'll get started. This is great that it's also being recorded. So very excited to be here with you. Thanks for joining first thing. I'm Erin Stein, Head of Operations with Data Clinic. And, over the past almost decade, we've been doing a lot of data and tech for good partnerships. And this presentation is kind of going to be an overview synthesis of a lot of the lessons that we've learned over all these years of scoping and managing these projects. So I hope you'll come away with some good tips for your future partnerships. So to set the stage first, who is Data Clinic? Where do we sit? We are within 2 Sigma, which is a financial sciences company headquartered in New York City. And the vast majority of our employees are actually data scientists and engineers that come from non-financial backgrounds. So what they're really great at is creative thinking, problem solving in new domains. And it was a group of these employees that wanted to do that very same thing in support of mission-driven organizations. So we've been partnering pro bono with nonprofits, academia, government agencies on their data and tech needs for, as I mentioned, about almost 8 years now. So we've loved it. It expanded over time. And not only has the work we've done expanded, but as you clearly see from this conference, that there's really not a shortage of these data and tech for good support organizations in the for-profit world, in academia, in the nonprofit world. And while this is great that this is growing, unfortunately, right now, the supply still doesn't meet the demand. So, the first time you're going to get in contact with a lot of these organizations is this kind of intimidating open-ended contact form. And you want to make yourself stand out. You want to show that you're ready for a partnership so that, it's more likely that you'll be able to engage with one of these partners. And I have to admit that this is actually the contact form on our website at the moment. And we fully recognize that it can be a little, as I mentioned, intimidating to start filling this in. There's a lot that you want to communicate about the great work your org is doing and what you would like to do in data and tech. So let's talk about how you can start to draw in that attention. And in this presentation, we're going to think through this in the framework that you see on the slide here. We're going to first set the vision for your organization, try to understand how your challenges, data and tech challenges, fit the bigger picture mission strategy of your organization. Next, we're going to think about who should be involved, getting all the people who could be affected by this project in to share their thoughts, get their buy-in, so that this is something that they actually can and want to implement and will be positive for all of them afterwards. After that, we got to understand what are the actual inputs, what are the data and tech that you currently have access to that could help answer these challenges. After that, once the kind of stage is set, we're going to think kind of even further in the future, what should this project ultimately provide? What should it produce? It should be something that your team is ultimately very comfortable with managing beyond the life cycle of the project, so that it's something that you can sustainably integrate into your organization in the long run. And last but not least, even from the beginning, you want to start thinking about who else could potentially benefit from this partnership, right? There's so much reinventing the wheel. So let's think about how we can share learnings, share products, etc., that could benefit the larger space. And I want to also give a heads up that you don't have to have all the answers to these questions right at the very beginning. This is something that's going to be a conversation throughout with the potential org, but it's very important to start off with a strong vision. So let's kick off there. We actually hear fairly often the phrase, we've got this really interesting data, we just don't know what to do with it. That's unfortunately, that doesn't show us the strategy. What do you hope can happen for your organization? It's a bit too vague. We need to kind of get more concrete. And plus, just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should do it. You might have really interesting data, and as researchers, we might think, oh my gosh, it would be so interesting to answer this question or dig into this or that. But just because that's interesting for us doesn't mean that it would actually be valuable for you and appropriate for the organization, the community that you're reaching. So think concrete. What are the actual needs at your organization, no matter how big or small they are? Because in reality, they might actually be smaller or bigger than you think. So just think about the questions that your team asks in your team meetings. Are you thinking about how you can use your resources better? Are you strapped for time doing X, Y, and Z? Are you trying to reach more people or specific segments of people? Are you considering a strategy pivot? But before you can confidently do that, is there some contextual information or that you would like to learn? So start creating this wish list, especially because the first question or challenge you write down might not necessarily be feasible. So get your colleagues together and start putting these ideas down. And then in terms of engineering and tech, think about what tasks are you doing regularly that are challenging or just plain time consuming, using a lot of resources. Because if there's something repetitive, it might be able to be automated, saving you time that could be used towards more kind of crucial strategy or outreach or programming. And then once we had these kind of seedlings, these project ideas, next step is to start to really kind of dig in. The partner org like us, we might be meeting you for the first time. So we need to understand how this little seedling of an idea is really going to impact your work and lead to some long-term change. And so we're kind of going to turn almost into toddlers here and keep asking why. Why is the sky blue, right? So we are going to first ask, okay, here's that question you wanted to ask. Well, why do you want to answer this? What would it help you do? Okay. What would it help you learn? And why would you want to learn that? Well, okay, it would help you do something. Well, why would you want to do that? Well, hopefully there's going to be some long-term effect down the road. And by kind of digging into this, you're going to start to surface what success is actually going to look like concretely for your team, both in the near term, maybe at the end of this project, a year from now, maybe it's 5 years from now. And on top of that, what's kind of the delta? What is the actual value add to your organization? Additionally, we're going to start to uncover some of the ethical considerations for this project. As we think further down the road, we're going to better understand who are the other people that this project might impact, so that we can make sure we're considering them in the design approach of this project. And lastly, for us, the project partners, we are going to start highlighting some technical requirements, some mathematical, statistical approaches that might be relevant in this scenario, so we can think through what would we need to have access to it in order to be able to answer this. So there's a lot of kind of business strategies out there that say ask 7 whys to find kind of the core motivation or the actual root cause of something. The number of whys doesn't necessarily matter as long as you ask yourself it enough times to get to this bigger picture. Show the partner that you're thinking strategically and that this is going to be something that could truly impact your organization in the long run. So what does this look like in practice? Well, we had an org come to us and say, can we predict school performance? And at first we thought, oh gosh, that's probably not going to be actually feasible because we've worked with school data a lot. And we know that performance data kind of oscillates naturally from year to year. And so that's going to be a really hard problem to solve with the open data we had access to. And so we asked why. Why do you want to predict performance? And their response was actually that they want to see which schools are on an upward trend. And as soon as we see upward trend, we think, oh, this is actually kind of considering longer term patterns. So maybe over several years is the school trending upwards. And that actually might be something that is easier to pull out. So, okay, let's keep going. Why would you want to know that if a school is trending up? Well, they wanted to see which schools might not be like in a place where they could be good partners right now, but might be in the future. So they wanted the school to be kind of stable enough that they could take in new programming. But when we hear this idea that, you know, right now they aren't good partners, we're realizing that what they're really saying is that they want to identify schools that are actually doing well, but you can't tell on the surface. And that's kind of like saying which schools are doing better than you would otherwise expect. And that's something that really was feasible for us, is something that we could do, and provide potentially even more insights to this organization to be able to identify the schools that are actually doing better than you would otherwise expect. So we're really excited about that idea. And we wanted to still understand kind of in the bigger picture, why do you want to identify schools for partnerships? And ultimately, they're trying to get their programming into more underserved schools. So from that, we knew that socioeconomic data is going to be really important here, so we could disaggregate that. And also, we need to make sure, since we're dealing with underserved schools, we need to make sure that what we're doing is never going to penalize schools. If anything, this should only be opening up new opportunities to schools that otherwise wouldn't have had it. So here we thought a lot about the feasibility, the types of approach, what's the true question of this project, and what ethical and concerns should we be thinking about as we produce a solution. So once we have something like this, we've kind of gone back and forth and created a strong question or challenge we want to address. We need to make sure that we bring in all the relevant folks so that we can design a solution that works for everybody. You know, we don't want to leave someone out the table, create something that's going to be such a huge burden to them that it cancels out any benefit, right? And this is incredibly important to create inclusive solutions. So who are the kind of people you want to think about and bring to the table as early as you can? First off, who's facing the challenge? That's probably the person that wrote it down on the list in the first place. Then, okay, are there any related tools, software, programming, and who manages those? Who manages the programs related to that, services for your community? Who would actually act on the solution? And And who is managing resourcing decisions? Finally, and again, last but not least, who would be affected by the solution? And this is such a crucial topic as we make sure that we're designing with folks rather than designing solutions for them. You know, it's a topic that's top of mind for a lot of people. We need to make sure that the solutions are being built in a way that's appropriate, that's responsible, that's ethical. And the only way we're going to do that is if we actually have those people contributing to the design of the solution. I will say that there are going to be some instances in the partnership with a data and tech support org where direct interactions between those affected by the solution and the partner might not be feasible. There might be privacy concerns, etc. And that's all right, as long as we can confidently trust that the org is can act as a proxy. They know their community inside and out. Perhaps they have a representative on their team. Hopefully they do. And that way, they're still going to be kind of incorporated in this system, even if they cannot directly communicate with the data and tech support org. The other thing to note is the folks who make the resourcing decisions don't necessarily have to be, 100% committed to moving resources at the get-go. They might need to see a proof of concept first to see the potential and what this is feasibly going to look like before they say, okay, yes, we can fund XYZ or hire somebody else or whatever it takes. And our team actually really loves that. These proof of concept projects are really exciting because you get to see like a pretty impressive and exciting organizational change at the end, where this data and tech married with what they do on already kind of becomes more of a priority. So consider that as an option. All right, so in practice, we have been working with Nurse Family Partnership for a while. They're an incredible organization that provides in-home nursing support to vulnerable first-time mothers. But unfortunately, a lot of these mothers don't complete the entire program, which means they aren't getting the full benefit. So what we set out to do was to create a flag that could alert nurses when their client is at risk of dropping out. That provides the opportunity for the nurse to reach out proactively and try to engage that mother. And when we thought about all the stakeholders, especially in hindsight, these were all the kind of folks we were thinking about. So it was initially the research team that was trying to tackle the problem. The IT team was managing the database of all this data on the clients. Nursing teams obviously were the ones actually doing the outreach to the mothers alongside the site managers. Senior staff make resourcing decisions. And we couldn't talk directly to the mothers, again, privacy concerns, but the nurses knew those mothers inside and out and could represent them and what's practical for them throughout the conversations. That's great. Unfortunately, we started off this project kind of thinking of this as a proof of concept research project because we didn't know if it was possible in the first place. So, and once it started to seem possible, we didn't realize that it had kind of changed to that phase, and we hadn't brought in the IT team immediately to think about practically how could we implement this model on your system. And they were actually going through a pretty big change to their database, bigger than we thought it was, which meant kind of adapting the model was ended up being a much larger task near the end of the project than we had originally hoped. So we could have saved a lot of time, created more efficient experience for NFP had we brought them in earlier. All right, so once we have kind of the project idea, alongside all the great minds that can contribute to a valuable, responsible solution, we need to understand what we have to as input into this project. You know, a project's only going to be feasible if we have the materials that we need. And some of you might know exactly what your materials are, where it is. If not, this is a great opportunity to reflect on this, maybe create a data dictionary or infrastructure diagram so that you have it handy for any types of partners in the future. So the first thing we're going to talk about is getting to know your data. And this could be your proprietary data or it could be open data. Both could be very valuable. So first off, what do you collect? And that question actually overarches a lot of other questions. Well, who do you collect it on? How do you collect it? How much of it do you have? All that kind of stuff, including what are your actual rights to sharing it? You're likely, you want to make sure you're living up to the expectations of the folks who shared that data with you, right? So it's something that a lot of organizations forget to think about at the very beginning. So go back, double check your agreements. And then just as important as what you do have and what it's looked like over time is what isn't there. And again, it cannot be stated enough. You need to be aware of what you have as what you don't have for two reasons. First off, there are some research questions that are really only feasible to tackle if you know what did happen and what didn't happen. So you kind of have to have both sides for certain research questions. And probably even more importantly, this is going to help uncover any biases that you have in your data. You want to understand, well, you know, let's say that you're collecting data purely through social media, then it's more likely that your data is probably going to cover a lot of millennials, but it might not have many aging population in your data set. So that's going to uncover kind of potentials and limitations of this project. Whatever comes out of this is likely going to more reflect and be more appropriate for the millennials than the aging population. So this not only is going to tell you what's feasible, but it's going to kind of set your expectations for the appropriateness and relevance of what this project can do. All right, so in addition to your data, have to think about the tech that you have and kind of think through all the actions that your organization takes from day to day, be it collecting data, analyzing data, day-to-day operations, you know, assigning people different tasks. And this might be kind of nicely packaged UIs, maybe it's Google Forms, Excel, Tableau, etc. Or it could be the programming languages if you've got coders on your team. So are they Python users? Are they R users? Kind of get to know what the lay of the land is. And in addition to what you have now, it's important to also kind of think in the long term. Some folks might have a long-term tech strategy already laid out. If you don't have all the answers of what's going to happen in the next 5 years, that's fine. But you should at least start to have a think, you know, do we have any contracts with software that's going to expire in the next 5 years, right? It's good to have a sense of what's this going to be the stability or the sustainability of any tech solutions for this project. So have a moment to kind of reflect on what you have and what might change in the near future. So one example of what this looked like, we had an organization that's very keen on getting more folks involved in the democratic process. They came to us and they said, is it possible to predict our users' registration and voting habits? And that's a very interesting question. We're excited about this. This organization, they do great work. We had to understand what data they had on their users to see if this is possible. And they had millions of user accounts over almost a decade across the US. They had the rights to share this with us. And, we thought this is pretty great. It's very promising. Just need to make sure it gets anonymized, and they have the ability to anonymize it because our organization doesn't take in personally identifiable information. But this sounds great. Let's learn a little bit more. Has this changed? Has your service changed at all over that decade? Has the data changed? Well, their kind of approach changed recently, and because of that, almost 3/4 of their data came from one single year, from one single source. So we knew right away that this was going to be kind of biased towards that group. And so we had to make it very clear, okay, any analysis we do is mostly going to reflect that source and that group's habits. Is that all right? They were confident that that would still be helpful. So we asked a little bit more. Well, okay, this is what you do have. What don't you have? And they mentioned, well, we don't have actual registration dates. We have different information for the people who did and did not register. And we only have the voting habits for these few years. And that showed us that there weren't actually going to be able to, we wouldn't be able to actually tackle that prediction problem for them because of that mismatch of data and the lack of kind of long-term data on the habits. So in the end, we had to shift from a prediction to looking at characteristics of folks that were that voted in that 1 year and who didn't vote in that 1 year. So this, again, the organization was confident this would still help them in learning about their audience and how to better reach their audience in the future. So we moved forward and ended up providing really great insight for them. But it wasn't exactly the project that they had originally asked us to do. All right, so if we have the project idea with the right folks, it looks like it's going to be feasible, at least for now. We can start looking ahead. What kind of solution should we be aiming for your team? This project, this partnership is only going to last so long. So we have to make sure that whatever we hand over at the end is actually going to be sustainable for you in the long run. So we have to get to know the stakeholders that we already identified, what they like and don't like about their tech. So how comfortable are they with their current tools? And on top of that, what other tools is everyone comfortable with that you don't already have? Because the current tools might not be able to solve the challenges you have. And we had a team, an organization come to us that had a data analyst that collected all of their open data in Excel, cleaned it, provide reports to their colleagues in Excel. And at that time, everybody was super comfortable with Excel. They liked using it. It informed their day-to-day decisions. The only negative they mentioned was that it was pretty clunky for them to clean that open data and merge it all. And so we decided, given that they're doing really well with Excel, we have to make sure that our insights can be easily added into their spreadsheet. But maybe there's a way for us to help them with that cleaning and merging process. And we learned that this data analyst was in the process of learning Python. And we got really excited because we love it. Maybe we could package this all up, both the pipeline and the model itself, so that they could run it on their own in the future, make it nice and easy. It would just require some coding. But this was actually this was us getting a little bit too eager too fast before having a very clear conversation with the partner about what even that small bit of coding would entail. We should have sat them down, showed them exactly what that's going to look like. provided them the opportunity to say, oh, I am comfortable with this level of coding at the moment, or I'm not yet comfortable. Maybe in a year I could do this. And on top of all that, relying on just one single person is likely unsustainable. You know, a lot of nonprofits are small, and that's okay. But if there's only one person that can do manage it or use a solution, you have to think about whether or not that's the right solution for you. You never know if someone's going to leave or gain new responsibilities where they don't have time to work on that anymore. So try to think about the simplest, most practical solution that could work. Here, we should have just provided a report of insights and shared them with the organization instead. Right. Lastly, thinking about scale. We talk about reinventing the wheel and how painful that is because somebody's tackled this problem in the past, but the solution is kind of behind closed doors. So let's open that up. Let's think about what it could be it could be just a part of your solution that may be able to help others. So think about the potential of open sourcing from the beginning, because that might slightly impact how you design your solution. We're all great at networking. We come to events like this. So first, obviously, have a think about who might be facing similar challenges, and then have a really serious kind of thought about what are the cost benefits trade-offs of creating something that's generalizable and usable by everybody versus something that's tailored for your situation. You know, by making something very general, it's possible that you might lose so much accuracy for your situation that it's truly not that valuable to you in the end. And that's okay. That's something you should truly consider. If that's the case, then make the solution for you. And maybe there's a piece of it that could be open sourced and kind of give people a leg up when they tackle that problem in the future. So one example, we had this great research organization that came to us. They wanted to understand if their sensitive analysis on 911 calls could be they want to see how that reflected patterns in the larger US. But 911 call data is a nightmare to work with. It's so messy. So they asked if we could help. And we knew off the bat that researchers and journalists cite this often as a challenge, that it's hard to make city-to-city comparisons because different jurisdictions and precincts use different definitions for their data and share different levels of data, et cetera. So we thought, okay, if we can do this, it could be helpful. And we thought, okay, this research org is going to have their own particular categories to analyze this data. But if we document that well enough, then other researchers could use this data and look at that documentation and adapt it to how they want to categorize the calls. And additionally, people who aren't versed in criminal justice could rely on the expertise of the research org and just use their call categories as is. So we determined that just with a little bit of extra elbow grease, that we could formalize the data pipeline, open source it, publish the data, and with just a minimal effort, other folks could bring other 911 call data sets into the database with minimal effort. And that's really exciting because we've already had several different organizations use that data since we put it out. So we just talked through these 5 kind of facets of scoping and managing a project. And it's important to know that you're never just going to go through this cycle once. You're going to have an iterative conversation that's going to keep kind of going through these topics, not only through the scoping process at the beginning, but through the actual project itself. As you uncover new challenges and you see new potential present itself. So make sure that you present that strong strategic vision at the outset, gain the attention of that data tech partner, and then be ready to start digging into these other facets as you have those further conversations. Um, all right. I know I went over a few minutes. I'm very sorry. Thank you all for joining. This is our contact information here. I'll be checking out the Slack channel. Happy to answer questions afterwards. And always reach out if you want to learn more about Data Clinic or potentially partnering with us. So thank you very much. Have a great rest of your time at the Good Tech Fest.